Hi everyone. In this video, I wanted to do a brief overview of what's going on with Apple stock. Of course, CEO Tim Cook held a conference call with Wall Street investors on May 4th, which highlighted a lot about what's going on at Apple that I think is important for Apple stock investors to know. So let's get right into the details. So, Apple CEO saying in this quarter, in the March quarter, their revenue was $94.8 billion, which was better than their expectations. Of course, they're facing challenges related to the macroeconomic environment, and revenue was down 3% year over year as a result. The iPhone, however, set a new record in the March quarter with revenue of 51.3 billion. This was better than a lot of analysts were expecting. Apple sold a lot of iPhones in 2020 and 2021, and there was fears that those people that bought iPhones in those years, which was a lot of them, were not going to upgrade for several more years. iPhones generally stay with users between 3 to 6 years. And so there was worry that iPhone sales could come in very, very low, and that was not the case, and that relieved many investors. Turning to its Mac segment, which reported revenue of 7.2 billion in the March quarter, Mac faced a difficult comparison with the same quarter last year when Apple rolled out their new M1 chips. And so people bought those in high numbers last year, and of course that makes it difficult this year when you compare with last year, right? So the sales were higher, and so when you compare this year with last year, it makes it look like sales went down, but it was because sales were extra high last year in the same quarter. iPad revenue was impacted by macroeconomic challenges, and revenue came in at $6.7 billion. Wearables, home, and accessories revenue came in at 8.8 billion. Of course, Apple has done an excellent job with these innovative products, including the AirPods and the Apple Watch. Services, which are arguably one of Apple's most important segments, came in at all-time record revenue of $20.9 billion. App Store, Apple Music, iCloud now have more than 975 million paid subscriptions. That's a whopping amount. And still, there's room for that figure to grow when you consider that Apple has more than 2 billion active devices in the world today. There are more than 2 billion Apple devices in use as we speak. And the reason why I noted that Apple's services segment is one of its most important segments is because of the higher profit margin in this segment. Typically, Apple's products sell for a gross profit margin around 35%, while Apple's services gross profit margin is north of 70%, 70% gross profit margin on the services segment. So you can understand why the growth of this segment is so important to Apple's stock price. It's because each dollar of revenue from this segment is so much more profitable than a dollar of revenue from any of its other segments. Although you could argue that the services strongly rely on its sales of hardware, and so you can't really get services sales unless you sell an iPhone or a Mac computer or an iPad, because that's where people are most often buying Apple's services on. Last month, Apple introduced the Apple Card Savings Account, where it gave users more value out of their daily cash Apple Card benefit. And Apple's savings account rate, the rate they give people for keeping money on the Apple Card, is competitive with the highest rate in the industry today. So you can count on Apple taking market share away from other savings account with this robust savings rate that they are offering in the market today. And lastly, I will end the video with this final positive news from Apple, in that in the US they launched their Shop with the Specialist over video. And this is a new way for customers to learn about the iPhone. And so if you have questions about buying an iPhone, instead of just going to the website and placing an order, you can shop with a specialist if you might have specific questions instead of having to travel to an Apple store to speak with a person on premise. So that could be an incremental boost to Apple's sales. And finally, um, Apple opened its first two stores in India, in Mumbai and Delhi. Remember, India is a massive market with over 1 billion people, and Apple just now opening their first two stores in the region. If they can make inroads in India, and this is just the beginning, meaning they've got two this quarter, another six next quarter, and then 24 the quarter after that, and 100 the quarter after that. If they can keep expanding their reach in India, this can be huge news for Apple. And I know the CEO has made India an important part of the business strategy, not just for sales, but given the geopolitical tensions with China, Apple's supplier location is strongly concentrated in China, and they're looking to diversify away from that. One of the regions they're trying to diversify into is India. So, both in the supply and demand side of their business, India could play a critical role going forward. This was a good step towards that aim, right? So, that's good news for Apple stock investors. All right, but that's all I've got for this brief video highlighting what's going on with Apple stock. Thank you so much for watching. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.